It's my feel-good breakfast show.
I love that tune as it announces my favorite segment of the entire week. It's baby talk time, and we're focusing on a very important time this time around. Pregnancy, of course, a very energy draining and emotional time for moms and dads alike and for families. And of course, there are many, many challenges that come with raising a baby. And you think about the first year, the first 6 months, the first week, but what about the first day? When last did you think about that? Those first 24 hours that mom needs to get through. And that's why we've reeled in the expertise of occupational therapist and parenting author Meg Faure, alongside paediatrician Britta MaClaren, who join us this morning. Ladies, a very good morning.
Morning.
So the first thing that I think a lot of mommies and daddies probably wonder about is, what will my baby look like? You're there in the labor ward, you're in the room, it's either surgery or it's natural, your baby comes out. What can you expect, Meg, from what your baby will look like after birth? Because you've seen the 4D scan. You've seen the other scans.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to look like the 4D scan. I can tell you that. And babies often come out looking quite ugly, particularly babies born by natural delivery, because they've been squashed and they're a little bit swollen and puffy, and they might be a little bit wrinkly as well. And they're also covered with like this white, waxy coating called vernix, and it doesn't look very pleasant. They really don't look very beautiful. But of course, when you're the mother, you think they're the most beautiful thing in the whole world. There you go.
That is so true.
That's vernix.
So true.
Yeah, there you go.
And then you look at the pictures 2 months later, and you're like, whoa, maybe you were a little alien when you came out. But one thing that worried me when Phoenix was born was that he looked a little bit off color. In fact, he was purple. I say to people, he looked like Barney. So is that something that people can expect, Britta? If your baby's blue or pink or purple, is that okay?
Yeah, usually babies do come out blue or purplish looking, and the reason is that when they're in the womb, they're actually getting deoxygenated blood, which is blue in color rather than pink. Oxygen's required to make the blood pink and make the baby pink up. So as they come out, they're bluish, and it takes a minute or two before you start to see that they pink up more and more.
Yeah.
So that's quite normal. And my husband also got quite a shock. Later he told me he thought for a moment that she wasn't alive. And she came out looking blue. Yeah.
It's a scary thing. And Meg, you mentioned vernix, very important function that it serves in terms of the baby. And I remember I was thinking, aren't they going to wash the baby or something? And no, they left the vernix on, and within a couple of days it almost had absorbed into the skin and was part of the baby, which was wonderful. But what special function does this vernix perform?
So there's two functions. The function in utero is it kind of moisturizes and protects the skin from all the water, otherwise your baby would come out completely wrinkly.
Yes.
And then as you get towards a baby being like 40 weeks, it actually starts to be absorbed. So if you've got a baby who's born at 40 weeks or later, they might have very little vernix on them, just in the creases of their underarms and so on. But the reason we love vernix afterwards is that vernix smells familiar. It smells of the womb world. And so we've found that babies who are not washed, like you said, Phoenix wasn't, get their hands to their mouth sooner, and they actually start to soothe themselves on their body sooner because the taste is so familiar.
Yes.
So I really encourage mums not to wash their babies on that first day, and like you did, actually allow the vernix to absorb into the skin.
First week.
Fabulous.
No bathing time.
I love it.
And then you get that baby smell.
It's the best thing in the world.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And then there's the big thing about skin to skin. Everyone is making a big hype about it. Why is skin to skin contact so important?
So the way the baby comes into the world is actually got a lot of consequences, for short-term consequences and long-term consequences in terms of the baby's transition for mom and baby. So babies that have done skin to skin in the first the first few moments and as long as possible really after birth make a better transition, and this is shown in studies by stabilized sugars, stabilized temperature regulation, and stabilized breathing patterns as well. So it's very calming for the baby. It takes a lot of the stress away. They cry a lot less as well in those few minutes or preferably an hour or so after birth.
Yes.
So it's great for the baby, but interestingly also for mum. It helps bonding. Those maternal instincts and maternal patterns set in quicker. Mums that do skin to skin after birth are shown to breastfeed for longer. So there's actually a lot of really important benefits of something as simple as skin to skin.
And you mentioned crying, but what if your baby doesn't cry? Because not all babies cry when they're born, right?
Yeah. And that's frightening. I mean, I certainly, it's my third baby. She was a Caesar baby, and she just came out gurgling, those sort of noises. And I was like, Something wrong with her. Where's
doing
the
the crying
cry?
thing? Turn him upside down.
Come on, give it a
slap the
slap.
bum.
But she didn't, and they don't always cry, do
Yeah.
they, Britta?
No, absolutely. So some babies just don't come out kicking and screaming and crying, and they just need a little bit of stimulation and a little bit of, to get them going.
Yeah.
So it's quite okay as long as they cry and breathe, within the first few moments. It's fine. But you wait for that sound.
All right, well, we're going to ask Britta and Meg to sit with us a while longer as we discuss the first 24 hours when your baby is born. And when we come back, we're going to talk about something called an APGAR score. If that's got you going, whoa, what is that? Stay tuned.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's baby talk time. We've got Paediatrician Britta MaClaren joining us alongside occupational therapist and Meg Faure, who talks to us about the first 24 hours, about what a mom needs to know, what dad needs to know in order to be calm in the hospital, to be calm in the labor room while it's all happening. We've spoken about Vernix that covers your baby as a protective layer, ensuring that they remain moisturized and also gives you that baby smell. Now, APGAR score is something that we alluded to before the break. What is an APGAR score and why is it so important?
Okay, so lots of parents they'll ask you what were the APGARs, and they're a little bit disappointed sometimes when their baby didn't get full marks right from the first breath, but that's really not the point of the APGAR score. The APGAR score has a look at things like breathing, heart rate, color, tone, in the first few minutes of the baby's life. And it's actually impossible to get full marks, a full 10 out of 10 on the very first time, because as we said earlier, they come out blue. So already they're going to lose a point for that color. So what's really important is to see how the baby improves.
Okay.
So it's done routinely at 1 minute, at 5 minutes, and at 10 minutes, and then, periodically after that if necessary, but it's a marker of how well the baby's doing or how well the baby's responding to any intervention that needed to be done.
Yeah, and of course there's a lot that happens in those first few
Absolutely,
minutes.
yeah.
Midwife is giving the baby to the pediatrician's putting him down, there's a light and measuring head and length and all these kinds of things, and then comes the very important thing of the first injections that a baby gets, which can be quite traumatic for a parent who's watching it happen for the first time. What can you expect?
So the vitamin K injection is given usually in the delivery room, and this is it's necessary because babies are often they're at a risk of being born vitamin K deficient, and there's a number of reasons for that. But in the past, before we gave vitamin K routinely, we saw a lot of what is a horrible disease called hemorrhagic disease of the newborn, which can be fatal or quite devastating. Since the routine injection of vitamin K, we've seen a massive, massive decline in this rate that people don't really even know about it anymore. And that's why vitamin K is so important. That's why it's given in the delivery room so that it's not forgotten. And that is one of the first injections that the baby will get. And it is confusing. Your new little precious bubba comes in and somebody's putting a needle in it, straight away. But it's very important.
Keep calm in that moment.
Yeah.
Meg, how can parents best prepare for their baby's birth?
Look, I think flexibility for that first day is the most important thing. You don't know exactly how it's going to go. And I think, we have this amazing idea of the baby coming out, with a gorgeous natural delivery, skin to skin, but sometimes things don't go that way. And I think flexibility, in fact, for the whole of parenthood, but certainly for that first day is important because you don't know how your birth is going to be. I think definitely give your gynecologist or your obstetrician a plan for how you want it to go. So things like, I want to do skin to skin. I want my husband to cut the cord. I want my baby to be left with the vernix on. I want my baby maybe not to be measured immediately at birth. I had that. I said, I don't want her to go onto the scale. I don't want her to be measured. She must come straight onto my chest. So even though my third baby was a Caesar baby, I could do it that way. So I think prepare yourself for what you actually want and then have some flexibility for that first day.
Yeah. Let's skip forward to what happens a few hours later, or what I believe should happen a few hours later, latching, where the baby has its first drink. Very, very important. It's a very important bonding time for mom and baby as well. How soon should that be happening, and when should the baby start feeding?
So it should happen ideally within the first hour of birth, actually. So in that first hour, the baby is actually quite alert and ready for this new challenge of its first task, which is latching and starting the feeding process. So That's really the golden hour. You do want latching to happen within the first hour. So it gives some time for mom to recover, if it's been a Caesar, to come out of theatre. But, you know, shortly after that, usually in the recovery room, when they're busy doing the vitals on mum, someone will help the baby to latch.
Yeah. And then some parents might be very worried at the fact that the baby might be losing weight in those first few hours or first few days. Should they worry?
Yeah, no, I mean, all babies lose weight. And the reason is that they've got tiny, tiny little tummies. I mean, I saw in your notes for our meetup that the tummies are only the size of an almond, which I was fascinated by. They've got tiny little tummies, but the great thing is that that first milk that comes through in the mom's breast is not actually milk, it's colostrum, which is very, very fatty, and that can sustain the babies. But they will lose weight over the course of the first week, definitely. And then by the time they're, how many weeks old do they have to have regained it?
We like them ideally to have regained their birth weight within a week. Some sources will say up to 10 days, depending on how much weight was initially lost. But interestingly, there's also water retention which comes into play. And if mom had a lot of fluid during delivery, if there was a complication or delivery was very long and received a lot of intravenous fluid, that can be even more than 10%. So that's why there's a little bit of leeway, about a week to 10 days to regain.
There's so much that we can still talk about, and you know, the fact that the colostrum results in the meconium in the first diaper, so don't be scared, your baby's okay. If that black stuff is in the nappy, it's all right. But quickly, details on the meetup, 29th of September.
Yes, 29th of September in Johannesburg at the Kyalami Convention Centre. We've got the baby show and meetup.
Yes.
And Britta is actually one of our speakers in the pregnancy sense session, along with Litseho Zulu, who's a fitness expert. We've got amazing speakers, and we really encourage the mums to go online. They have to book for that part of the event. They can't just pitch on the day because we're already selling out. And so they will need to be, come along on the 29th of September.
Ladies, thank you very, very much. There you heard it. You can get your tickets. Of course, right now, go to babyshow.co.za, and you can also follow them on social media at The Baby Show SA, and follow the hashtag meetup.
Moms, dads and grandparents-to-be. Catch the UK's #1 parenting event, The Baby Show, September 28th to 30th at Kyalami Convention Centre. Hosted by Meg Faure, co-author of the Baby Sense book series, with baby-related exhibitors, a catwalk of the latest baby fashion, and accessories plus family entertainment. At The Baby Show and hashtag meetup, sponsored by Pampers. Learn, prepare, try and buy all you need for bump, baby and you.